Well, hello again, Liberty lovers. Welcome to another exciting interview on Good Morning Liberty. My name is Josh Martins, and joining me today is Senator Ron Johnson. Now, Senator Johnson is from the great state of Wisconsin, which means he is actually my senator. And he is the chairman of the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, and he recently put out a report called Unmasked: How Biden Health Officials Purposefully Turned a Blind Eye to COVID Vaccine Safety Signals. Now, I found what was in that report quite disturbing, and I thought the best way to handle this was to have the senator on and have him tell you for himself kind of what he found. So, Senator, welcome to the show.
Well, Josh, first of all, appreciate your interest in this. We published our report, held a hearing on April 29th. And to this date, I think only Epic Times is the only news organization that covered it as a story. The major networks, the major newspapers, I've been interviewed by other podcasters like you on Fox News, Fox Business, that type of thing. But not one of these outlets has covered this as a news story. And I personally think this is probably the biggest government scandal of my lifetime. So let me lay it out.
Yeah.
Because of Bobby Kennedy's commitment to radical transparency, without help, quite honestly, from members of his department who are sabotaging his efforts by and large, he finally forced them to turn over 11 million pages of records, documents. Again, when we do oversight, when we subpoena information, it's much more focused, much more targeted. Would have been a lot easier for us if they would have just honored the subpoena as we did, but they just dumped 11 million pages in the laps of my 6 investigators. That's all I have. I got 6 people, okay? But they're very good at what they do. And with the help of search engines, that type of thing, we were able to find some needles in the haystack. And here's the primary needle we found. On March 1st of 2021, this is less than 3 months after the emergency use authorizations have been granted to both Pfizer and Moderna, Peter Marks, the head of the division within FDA that approves vaccines and also is supposed to surveil for safety signals of these approved drugs and vaccines, was warned by one of their chief data mining experts that the algorithm they were using to analyze the VAERS system, which was being deluged with adverse event reports, was going to hide and mask safety signals. Let me just quick describe the deluge, what I mean by that. Prior to the COVID injection, VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, got somewhere between 40 and 50 reports per year. In 2021, they got over 1 million.
Oh, my.
40 to 50,000 to 1 million. I mean, that's a safety signal right there screaming at them.
Right.
So anyway, he was warned that the algorithm they're going to use was going to hide and mask safety signals. I can even explain that pretty easily.
Yeah.
With the COVID injections, you had 2 main ones, Moderna and Pfizer. Both were reporting similar amounts of adverse events. So let's just take deaths. In prior to 2021, on average, there'd be about 280 deaths reported per year associated with some vaccine, 280. In 2021, there were 21,000 deaths reported worldwide. Again, a safety signal itself screaming at you. Those were about equally divided by Moderna and Pfizer, okay? So if you're looking at Pfizer, you compare the deaths between Pfizer and Moderna and the other vaccines, you're comparing 10,000 to 10,280. Then you switched up, you go, well, now let's look at Moderna, 10,000 versus 10,280 with all other. So again, they were equally safe, but they were equally dangerous. And so the safety signals were masking each other. So again, it's obvious to see what I'm talking about here, right? It's not that hard to imagine this. They were well aware of the masking issue, but now they were specifically warned the algorithm they were going to use was going to hide and mask the safety signals. 26 days later, Dr. Anna Scharsman, she's a data mining expert, using a different algorithm that was created by the inventor of the original algorithm that worked at Oracle, showed them a new data run that showed 25 safety signals, including sudden cardiac death, pulmonary infarction, Bell's palsy, different types of strokes. Okay, this was the end of March 2021. They continued to do data runs for 3 months because, again, these reports were being deluged with them, showed additional cases of sudden death, other types of very serious adverse events. And instead of pinning a medal on their badge and go, thank you for finding this error so we can, warn the practitioners to be on the lookout so we can get more reports. Again, the whole point of safety surveillance is find the needles in the haystack, find the unusual safety signals so that you can warn practitioners, be on the lookout for this. See if you're seeing more cases of X, Y, and Z. No, they shunted her off to the side. They told her to cease and desist. They said, we weren't asking for this data. Don't provide it. Do the job you're assigned to do. And to this day, they continue to lie that they never saw safety signals. So again, this is supposition on my part. I've got to believe once they've approved these injections and they start seeing their VAERS system deluged with these adverse events, they just had to be, scared out of their wits, right? Go, what is happening here, right? Then they find out the algorithm they're using is going to mask the safety signals. So if they keep using that algorithm, they can go to the American public and say, we're just not seeing safety signals. Now, why do we have more adverse events? Well, we're providing billions of these doses.
Right.
Which, by the way, is an aside. In 2023, the tail end of there, I sent an oversight letter saying, look at the number of deaths per dose. And I compared the current figures back to the end of 2023, deaths per dose of the COVID injection, 25.5 per million doses. 25.5. For the flu vaccine is about 0.46 deaths per million doses.
Okay.
It's a 55-fold increase. Again, another safety signal, right?
Right.
So they have been lying to us bold-faced. They've been covering up. We proved earlier that they admitted they saw a safety signal on myocarditis, hid it. Later in 2022, they saw a safety signal on ischemic stroke in people over 65 years old, downplayed it, hid it. But again, we found the mother lode of the cover-up with the fact that Peter Marks was warned of this. He saw data runs. Their senior officials in the FDA saw data runs showing dozens of safety signals. And to this day, they continue to cover up. We started interviewing these CDC officials, completely unrepentant. Completely unrepentant.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can show them that gets them to admit, yeah, that's a safety signal.
Interesting.
They just won't do it. They'll admit it to myocarditis because they already admitted that. These other things, which again, I think is just obvious.
Right.
By the way, to this day now, currently there's over 39,000 deaths reported worldwide associated with the COVID injection. Of those 39,000 deaths, 24% occur either on the day of the vaccination or within 1 or 2 days. Now they always say, well, VAERS doesn't prove causation. Well, okay, but that's a correlation. I know if my perfectly healthy loved one went in, got an injection, and died that day or within 2 days, I know what I would blame.
Right.
I know what I would certainly research. I know what I would certainly send to be on the lookout for to medical practitioners and the public. And why is this such a serious scandal? Because after that warning, after those data runs of March 2021, every human being on planet Earth, they were either mandated to take the shot, coerced or convinced to take that shot, did not have the information they needed for fully informed consent.
Right. And I think that's
parents were duped into vaccinating their children who had virtually a 0% chance of having serious harms from getting COVID. And now we know that FDA is admitting the children died. As they looked at 96 cases of child deaths, which again is just dramatically understating the problem here.
Well, and that's really tragic because children didn't need to be vaccinated from COVID. They weren't in any danger for the most part. I mean, I guess statistically, yes, I'm sure that somebody can be out there and tell me, oh no, this one person. But statistically speaking, they were at almost zero risk, as close as you can get to zero risk, right? So it's crazy to me that they were pushing this even after seeing these safety signals, because they were at far more risk. If what you're saying, what your report is saying is true, then they were at far more risk to take the vaccine than to get COVID itself. So if they knowingly did that, I would love to chalk this up to incompetence. I usually like to chalk it up to incompetence over somebody being evil, but if they're then covering it up once it comes out, that goes beyond incompetence. Now you're covering it up. Now you're taking away informed consent. And yeah, they were trying to mandate this for everybody, really. Luckily, some people pushed back, but that's just unbelievable.
So with the swine flu, they pulled that vaccine after 25 to 30 deaths, 400 to 500 cases of Guillain-Barré disease. They pulled it. They pulled it from the market. It wasn't safe enough. But by March of 2020, there are already thousands of deaths, thousands being reported. In end of April, I asked Francis Collins in a meeting with a bunch of other senators, Dr. Collins, are you watching VAERS? At that point, I think 46% of the deaths on VAERS, there were thousands. I can't remember the exact number, but there were thousands. 46% were occurring on the day of vaccinations or within 1 or 2 days. So you watching VAERS? Well, yeah, Senator, we've attributed 6 deaths to the J&J vaccine, with the clotting and stuff with the women of childbearing age. I said, well, what about it's actually 2,906, I think. So I said, what about the other 2,900 deaths? And he just callously said, well, Senator, people die. Oh. And that's what these guys, to this day, they're going, well, hey, people die. Another little factoid to throw in there, a CDC commissioned study at Harvard called the Pilgrim Study, back, I think, in 2014, 2015. So this was well before COVID. They're looking at how to improve the VAERS system. And part of that study showed that about 1% of serious adverse events were reported, 1%. So again, I think there's probably a higher percentage of COVID because people became aware of the VAERS system. But again, VAERS is very cumbersome. And by the way, a majority, not a large percentage of VAERS reports are reported by medical practitioners. A lot of people, it's a bunch of anti-vax cranks. No, it's medical professionals, okay? But again, if it's a 1% reporting rate, take that 39,000 times 100.
Right.
Or take the 1.7 million adverse events, other types, multiply that times 100. That's the order of magnitude of the problem, and yet not one major news outlet is covering this as news.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Just all ignoring it.
Yeah. A couple of things are coming to my mind here. So why didn't they just run both algorithms? Because if I'm reading the report correctly, the algorithm they started with was the one that they typically used. And that was the one that was masking those safety signals, right? And then she came with a different algorithm that was actually doing a better job. Why not continue to track both and get all the information out there?
Because they didn't want to know. They wanted to be able to lie to the American public that these things were safe and effective. Now, CDC used a completely different analytic technique called proportional reporting ratio. And again, that's where you're looking for disproportionate signals. Now, there's always a background rate of people having strokes and having heart attacks. What you're looking for is, okay, if you administer a drug, does the adverse events, does it exceed the background rate? You're looking for disproportionality, right? So CDC uses something called the proportional reporting ratio. Now, and again, the people in CDC, they were touting the VAERS. In October, before the emergency use authorization, they were, got V-Safe. We got so many ways we're going to be monitoring this. I mean, if you lose a day of work, we're going to have a CDC official call you up and, see whether or not you should file a VAERS report. It was all BS. So CDC did this PRR. We started, that's what we were aware of. So we started doing oversight. People started doing FOIA requests for the PRR. Finally, in 2022, they released it. And when they released it, all kinds of safety signals were exceeding the threshold rate of a ratio of over 2. And how CDC responded to that, so this is junk, this is noise. We're not using PR. We're using a far more effective, the gold standard, empirical Bayesian. That's the one that was masking the signals. And the FDA was doing that. So then the CDC officials, and we've interviewed these guys, said they weren't even getting EB reports from the FDA. So, what were you looking at? Oh, it's a more subjective measure. So, we're using root cause, and we're using a number of things. It's a much more objective or subjective evaluation. Again, they will never admit they were wrong.
Right.
So you put yourselves back in March, and you go, well, why didn't they start using that? They'd already proved it. There are already thousands of people who were killed by the vaccine they gave emergency use authorization. You think they wanted to admit that?
No.
Every day that went by that they wouldn't admit it, that they lied, that they weren't seeing safety signals, that they were calling the safe and effective, just compounds the lie. To the point where at this point, they can't afford to admit that they can't afford it. You can imagine if Peter Marks said, yeah, you're right. I mean, I saw those safety signals and I decided not to warn the public because we didn't want to create vaccine hesitancy. Right. My bad.
There's no way.
You think he's ever going to do that?
Well, and that goes to back to the news outlets too. Like they every single day for years was safe and effective, safe and effective. It's all safe and effective. So if they were to have to come out now and report the truth, I mean, it's the same thing. They seem to be covering their butts just as much as everybody else. And the other thing,
Yeah, they're all complicit. And let's face it, the reason Big Pharma advertises those awful ads that you don't even know what they're advertising for, have all the serious safety effects, it's not to sell a drug, it's to buy the narrative.
Right.
And they bought and paid for the narrative, and it was very effective during COVID, whether it was social media, whether it's big media, newspaper, TV in particular. I mean, those stations don't touch, any kind of vaccine injury anymore. They won't touch the 10-foot pole because, again, their advertising masters are Big Pharma.
you mean it's not to teach me how to happily run on a beach or throw a frisbee or something like that? Because that's all they're doing on those.
Throw a frisbee, you're a dog. Yeah.
All right. Not to joke, it's such a serious topic, but it really does scream that they prevented this because they wanted everybody to get vaccinated. That was the narrative, and they were protecting themselves from FOIA. They were protecting themselves. I think they thought they would protect themselves from people having anti-vaccine, sentiment afterwards, but they completely missed the mark. Like the cover-up is actually causing a lack of trust in these same institutions now, where people aren't getting that vaccine. They're not getting any vaccines. They're questioning every drug. Their credibility is now in the toilet because they covered it up. So, what harm do you think that these agencies have done now to themselves, to the future, and to the American people, because they can't do their job anymore because of this credibility problem?
Well, first of all, a large percentage of the American public no longer even trusts their doctors. They don't trust them. We're looking at testimonies from people who were, lost their loved ones in hospitals under the protocol. The remdesivir, or as nurses called it, run, death is near. That Fauci changed the endpoint from death to number of hospital stays. And even though WHO recommended against the use of remdesivir, that became the standard of care because it was highly profitable for Gilead, the drug company, but also for the hospitals who administered it. So I'm getting these testimonies where people were admitted, they were admitted with, acute kidney injury. So as they were admitted, they were being recommended against the use of remdesivir. They still got remdesivir forced on them. Knocks out their kidneys, kills them. They say, do not vent, still ventilated them. Even though, 90% of the people who got ventilated never came out the vents.
Yeah.
It was almost a death sentence itself. So again, the hospital protocols were awful. And again, I'm seeing so many different testimonies that if you'd go in there and you admitted you were unvaxxed, I mean, the callous comments from doctors go, well, your dad's going to die. He's unvaccinated. What'd you expect? Or this is a good one. In order to call the priest in to administer last rites, they'd only do it if they agreed to give their loved one remdesivir. I mean, I'm reading these testimonies, and it's sick. It's just tragic. And this isn't just at one hospital. This is hospitals all across the country, in probably every state. I mean, the tyranny caused, the viciousness, it's all led by the president of the United States saying this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Right.
This is a pandemic caused by gain of function funded by Anthony Fauci.
Which,
whipping all kinds of fear. In the end, COVID ended up being like a bad flu season in terms of infection fatality rate. And we knew that already back, about April, May of the 2020, the Center for Evidence-Based Medicine out of Oxford was predicting it'd be about double bad flu season in terms of infection fatality rate. I held a hearing to try and calm people down. We had the Princess Cruise, Johnny Anitas, did analysis on that. And listen, if you're elderly, certain comorbidities, could be a pretty fatal disease. For the rest of us, how many asymptomatic cases? That's where I had a COVID.
Right.
Other than testing, didn't even know I had it.
Yeah, mine
why was that? Well, I must have some sort of innate immunity.
Mine was like a headache for about 6 hours, and then I had a vacation because I couldn't go back to work. So, I think that cover up, all these cover ups were absolutely criminal, and it really does speak to something you mentioned before. how can people give informed consent? As a libertarian, I believe that every person has self-ownership. That's what makes us free. We own ourselves. If we can't give informed consent to taking a medication if we don't know as much information as we possibly can get. So the cover up there is a tragedy, right? It's criminal. But on top of that, now these people that are already injured because of this vaccine, they can't go after the vaccine companies because they have this immunity that was put into place in, what was it, the 80s? So what recourse do they have? What do they do now? They're stuck, right? And they don't really have any direction to go, any outlet. What do we do for these poor people?
So the real tragedy, the first thing we have to do is acknowledge the injection injuries, which we still haven't done. And because we haven't acknowledged them, they can't seek treatment. There's not even an ICD code for doctors to bill treating an injury. I left this part out also in March of 2021. The NIH was diagnosing and treating people with severe injection injuries. I mean, they were acknowledging it by treating people, and they found out and told the injection injured, first of all, stay quiet, don't tell anybody they were treating him. Of course, they didn't because they wanted treatment. The treatment was working, not 100%, but it was definitely, Brianne Dressen, flew out to get treatment, had to lay across 3 seats. She couldn't sit up. She was able to sit up flying home after the treatment. But they were told that early intervention was key to successful treatment. And then CDC never published it until the vaccine injured finally started making noise about it. They finally started speaking out. And so they put it on a preprint server, kind of a one-pager, told no one, like the Grinch, solve world hunger, tell no one. So to this day, doctors aren't aware of the fact that if you have somebody who believes they're vaccine or injection injured, intervene early with treatment. But because we don't acknowledge vaccine injuries, not in children, not with injection, people aren't treated effectively, even though there's some treatment that works pretty darn well, even for children harmed by childhood vaccines. But doctors don't know it because all doctors know is vaccines are safe and effective, and these people who think they're injured, they're a bunch of cranks. That kind of stuff happens.
Right. I mean, they're going to follow the CDC, right? Because if they stick their neck out, then it can come down on their head too, So the incentives are all going in the wrong direction. The world runs on incentives, and they are all incentivized to continue this cover up. So I guess being in the Senate and knowing that we have Republicans and even some Democrats that I'm sure are coming around to this, they have constituents at home that are dealing with this too. What can we do to change some of this and make it so that these people get noticed? What can we do to make it so that these vaccine companies are more accountable to the side effects of their medications? Like, what can we do to help these people out?
So first of all, you have to understand I'm a very lonely voice or lone voice in Congress. I mean, there are a couple of people in the House or a couple of my fellow senators that, agree with me, but they're not speaking out because they see what happens to me, the way I get treated in the media. So no, there is not a call for removing the liability protection on vaccines or on the COVID injection. There's just not. I mean, if you take a look at, when I hold these hearings, Voice of the Vaccine Injured, I have my ranking member, Richard Blumenthal, holds a press conference a couple hours before the hearing telling people, don't listen to this hearing. It's not credible. It's not worth your time. Calling the press off. They don't want to know. He calls witnesses, supposedly expert medical witnesses. First one was Dr. Jake Scott. I think that was in the Voice of the Vaccine Injured. And I asked Dr. Scott, because it sounds like he's pretty clueless about the mRNA vaccine. So, well, Dr. Scott, do you know what the composition of this mRNA injection is? Yeah, I do. So, well, do you believe this is true mRNA? What do you mean by that? I mean, like real mRNA, the type that degrades very rapidly in the body. Well, yeah. No, it's not. It's modified mRNA. It has a pseudouridine designed to not allow it to degrade. So there's studies circulating in the body for at least 700 days in some cases, okay? So it's not degrading. I mean, you're completely wrong. Did you think this was going to stay in the arm? Yeah, I think, no, it biodistributed all over the body, and they knew it in a study in rats. It was going to biodistribute all over the body. The lipid nanoparticle is designed. It's what houses the mRNA. It's designed to permeate difficult to permeate barriers like the blood-brain placenta. So again, that was their first witness. A few months later, I had a hearing called the plausible mechanisms of the injection causing cancers and the corruption of medical publishing. And the expert witness was the president of some oncology society clinicians. Can't remember the exact name, okay? Very respected. I mean, my witnesses were, wow, they really got a big hitter here. Great. It was obvious in her testimony, even though she came and she declared there's no proof that the COVID injections cause cancer. There's no proof. And so, but in her testimony, she says, the mRNA degrades within 20 minutes. Doctor, do you believe that that's real mRNA? Well, yeah. It's not. I mean, the Democrat staff didn't even tell her, you better be prepared.
Right.
Because Senator Johnson knows something about this. So she was completely ignorant of the composition, the mechanism, and yet she's out here declaring that the COVID injections don't cause cancer. There's no proof. Well, there's no proof. You never look for it.
Right.
I was on a podcast in Australia, and they had a local TV report about the skyrocketing rates of cancers in young people. And of course, then they have a doctor on there, totally baffled, but they're looking at, toxicological reasons, environmental reasons, what people are eating, what they're exercising. And I'm just waiting for,
right.
How about what happened in 2021 when you mandated the COVID injection for just about everybody in Australia? Are you going to look into that possibility?
Only the biggest event that medically that has happened in the past 50 years. You don't think that's important to take a peek at that one too? That makes no sense.
Well, you remember, of course, we can't acknowledge childhood deaths due to childhood vaccines. So they come up with a sudden infant death. We have no idea what causes it. Well, during COVID, we had to come up because we saw athletes dropping dead on the field or collapsing or of all these videos of just people collapsing. I've never seen anything like that at all. And so we had to come up with the new term SADS. Now it was a sudden adult death syndrome. And again, people were just baffled by it. What's happening? Look at what changed.
Right.
All of a sudden you're administering this experimental gene therapy that people predicted was going to cause all kinds of harm, that your safety signals are screaming at you. If you're honest with it, just the volume of them coming into VAERS, and you're really wondering what could have gone wrong here? What could be causing these people to collapse? Right. I mean, to this day, they're completely baffled by it, because it certainly couldn't be those injections, because one thing we know about vaccines and injections is they are safe and they're effective.
Yep.
Which, by the way, one more point.
Yeah.
If you're so confident these vaccines are effective, why do you care whether somebody gets it?
That's a great point.
The only rationales are for the people who are so vulnerable they can't have a vaccine. That's the only excuse. But I mean, if your children, get vaccinated, you're so sure these things are effective, why do you care whether some other family decides not to vaccinate their children?
Right.
I mean, it makes no logical sense.
It's true. So I guess what is next then? What happens next? Are we going to have some investigations? I mean, if you're a lone voice or one of the few voices, I'm assuming we're not going to be able to hold these people truly accountable. Are we going to have some investigations for them to have to answer to any of this to the public?
Well, we're continuing our investigation. Again, we just uncovered these documents out of 11 million pages. Now we're starting to actually interview the people. But again, initial interviews, completely unrepentant. We're not getting we're certainly not getting them to admit anything. But again, it's, this old saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We've been fooled dozens and dozens and dozens of times. Eventually, and again, it's happened. The fact we have such low uptake of the mRNA boosters shows that people are paying attention. You've got a Rasmussen poll, 24% of Americans believe they know somebody who died of the COVID injection. Again, you don't have to read a report by Ron Johnson. You saw it with your own eyes. You have your own family members had very serious adverse events. I know all kinds of people that couldn't work for a week.
Right.
They had brain fog. Their blood pressure spiked. They had horrible headaches. Right. So people know that these things cause adverse events. They don't need to look at data. They know personally.
Right.
So I guess I will continue. I will pursue this relentlessly. We'll continue to expose things. Eventually, maybe more and more of the public will say, "Yeah, I mean, they've lied to me now like a couple dozen times. I don't believe them anymore." And as we were talking earlier, I mean, there is a growing percentage of the American population don't believe their doctors. I can tell you, will never check themselves into the hospital because they've heard the horror stories of how these hospitals, I'm going to say it, became killing fields, compassionless killing fields.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just saying this after reading the testimonies. Compassionless killing fields. They ought to be ashamed. Okay. So again, people saw that. They've heard it from their friends and family and neighbors. They know people went in, said, "Don't give me remdesivir, don't put me on vent." They got remdesivir, they got put on a vent, they died.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, we get some trust back in our family doctors and stuff like that. But yeah, the cover up is often what causes a lot of this kind of fear, and unfortunately, those people will become victims as well if they do get a medical emergency that they need to get treatment for because they don't trust it. So these things have unintended consequences. These cover ups, and it shocks me to the arrogance that these people had to think that they could just cover this up. We're just gonna not tell them all that kind of stuff. They didn't think that there was going to be unintended consequences to that. It absolutely is mind-blowing to me. So I am very appreciative that you are out there. I'm very appreciative that you're going to continue this investigation. Hopefully we have some hearings, and hopefully the news media, enough people start questioning why they're not covering this and come around. Maybe the news media will come around and start reporting on it. Who knows? So
I'm not holding my breath, but I'm be holding plenty additional hearings, and I'll be relentless. I'll be relentless.
Well, Senator, I got one last question for you. Now, this is something I ask everyone, and I'm sure the listeners will be very excited to hear your answer to this. So if you had the power to change one thing for liberty, whether it moved us closer to liberty or opened people's eyes to liberty, what is something you would do?
Dramatically reduce the size, scope, and cost of the federal government. As government grows, your freedoms necessarily recede. The foundational premise of our republic was sovereign states, and most of the governing occurs at the state level, at the local level, where government is more accountable, it's more efficient, it's more effective. We, exceeded the bounds of the enumerated powers, really started big time during the New Deal under FDR, and we never looked back. But you have to look at the federal government. It doesn't solve problems, it exacerbates them. Forces people save Social Security, spend the money, it's gone. Now Social Security is going bankrupt, and we're, $2 trillion plus deficits. We're going to have the financial wherewithal to honor those promises. So people have to look realistically. Government doesn't work. Our founders were geniuses. They realized we're not angels. So if you don't want to live in chaos and anarchy, you need some government, but government needs to be limited. And our government right now is almost unlimited in terms of its power. I mean, if you wanted one definition of government, it's power.
It's very
As
true.
Lord Acton properly stated, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Federal government is corrupt. It's captured by the industries that it's designed to regulate. So if you want your freedom back, you have to reduce the size, scope, and cost of government. We will not reclaim freedom, not the level we should have, with a massive federal government. It's just impossible. They're antithetical to each other.
Amen. I got nothing to argue with that. In fact, I would even say case in point. If anybody's really questioning whether or not our federal government does way too much, think about it this way. Imagine your family doctor had all the information that you just presented, and then still gave you that shot. It wouldn't happen, because that family doctor's got to go home and see all of their patients and everybody in on the streets on the way home. It just wouldn't happen. So the way that these kind of cover-ups happen is because the federal government has too much power, and they are too removed from the people that they are trying to, control. And so amen. That is the only solution. And I know that you ran on that. I hope that we can send far more people like you there, so that you can actually, be able to turn the government in the direction you want to. But unfortunately, we got to send a whole lot more people like you and Thomas Massey and all the others. So, hey, Senator Johnson, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for laying this out, and thank you just for being out there and holding these investigations and actually getting the word out, even though everybody seems to have forgotten about it. Obviously the people haven't, but unfortunately it seems like our politicians, our news media, everybody is just trying to put that in the rearview mirror and not look at it anymore. But I appreciate that you're out there holding these investigations and really trying to get this out there to make these people whole and to prevent it from happening again.
Well, again, thanks for having me on. Appreciate your interest in it. You're helping spread the word. So God bless you. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, Liberty lovers, go online, check out Senator Johnson's report. In fact, I will send it out into the show notes. Take it to your local news media. Maybe the country, the government run or government run. Oh my goodness. Need a sip of coffee here. Maybe the federal run news media is not interested, but your local media might. So send it to people, let them read it. Let's get this word out there. Okay. While you're doing that, hop on over to goodmorningliberty.us, become a member of the Fed Haters Club. It's still only $7 a month. And you know what? You get access to the pre-show. You get to join in voting for Dumb Bleep of the Week, all that fun stuff. I can tell you, I don't think I've ever seen Senator Johnson on Dumb Bleep of the Week. So that tells you the credibility of our guest here today. But you get to vote there. So awesome there. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And please be good to the sponsors that support this show. They make it possible for us to bring these great guests to you. So please continue to be good to them. So if you do all that, I promise, I'm going to be back next time with another exciting person that you all need to know. Until then, remember, you own your choices, each and every one. So make some good ones. I hope you all have a good night, a good day, and a good morning, Liberty.